also need to think about how we drive a shift in thinking, because technical solutions are part of it. But we also need to make sure that we're shifting perceptions about the role of capital in society. Are we at a point, as we are, contending with climate change all around the world, in very visceral ways that are having a huge impact on communities across continents, to actually shift our thinking from the purpose of capital that is only to just create more capital, to one that has a broader set of considerations, that we are actually trying to integrate impact into all investing. And I think there is part of that we can do with data, but also it is a bit of a shift in ideology and thinking.
Yeah, how do we make that shift? One of the panels I went to earlier, talking about distributing impact in the retail market, and one of the hurdles being financial advisors, and they maybe don't understand it, or they don't know what it is, or they don't, and then they're not inclined to sell it, and then it doesn't get into the client's portfolios. We had a big piece in the FT this week from a guy named Leo Strine, who's the Chief Justice of the Delaware Supreme Court, who was saying very much what you were just saying, that we need to look at capitalism differently. And coming from someone like that, it means a lot. But looking at the comments, I don't know that message is getting through to everyone. What is the how do we get to that point where the cultural change happens?
Yeah, well, I think that we see elements of this happening already, right? Where we are actually, like, every single person who's here is an ambassador to a community or multiple communities, and I think all of you are really getting the message out, and with people from many countries around the world. Some of those countries have huge impact investing markets where there's a lot of activity, and others just have a few organizations that are working on this and are really pioneering a whole new conversation where they're based. I think that type of advocacy is absolutely critical. I also think part of what we're building are the tools by which we can actually operationalize some of those views of a new system. So as we're developing ways to understand our performance beyond just financial performance, that lays the groundwork for others to follow. And we are seeing, as evidenced by the people who are speaking here, large institutional investors, major asset managers, private banks, and a variety of other types of institutions who are all moving into impact investing. One thing I can share from experience is that in the early days of the GIIN, in the first couple of years when we had a very small group of members who were very committed, but it's very modest in terms of size, we thought that high net worth individuals would be incredibly excited about impact investing. We made a round of connecting with a lot of private banks and others. They all took our meetings, and they were very polite, but I think the message we got loud and clear was, this sounds really interesting, but our clients aren't asking for it, and until our clients aren't asking for it, we don't really have a great reason to move our machinery to operate in a different way. In the last 2 years, whether I'm here in Europe or in the US or Canada or in Asia, speaking to private banks that are now active in this network, there's been a huge groundswell of demand that they're hearing from their clients. And part of that, I think, is due to our collective efforts of raising awareness amongst that set. Investors do respond to demand signals, and I think that is something that's critical. I think one thing we haven't done as effectively as a community and as the GIIN is engage the retail audience, the broader community of investors. We've spent a lot of time with portfolio managers and CIOs of pension funds, but not a lot of time talking to the pensioners themselves. And I think that will be critical if we want political leadership or a change in the investment market.
I mean, I think we see some of that probably will change as the generational wealth transfer that we've been hearing about so much happens. But I think it's a very important point. It's important. I think everyone in this room probably is on board with the GIIN's mission. But there is still a bit of cynicism, or a lot of cynicism, out in the broader world around kind of the intentions or the efficacy of these types of programs. So getting out beyond preaching to the converted, I guess.
I think that's right, and also just making sure that people realize. One of the panelists said it earlier. Like, if you just ask people to think about what their retirement assets are in. and explore what they're already invested in. I think that if people are asking their financial advisors for something different, those demand signals will start to rise up to and we do have a lot of survey data that there is this intergenerational shift. It could be incredibly powerful, hopefully transformative. But we also need to make sure that we build the market that can support that demand and actually channel it to things that will not only have this intention of achieving real impact, but do so with great integrity. Because I think that is one thing that is essential to the growth of this market, is that we don't lose sight of the fact that we need, what brings people to this room and what brings people to impact investing is its integrity, and that is essential for motivating people to do things in a different way.
We have a couple minutes left. Does anyone have any questions or? No?
I think
there's one brave soul.
Thanks very much. Thanks for this great discussion and wonderful day. Delilah Rothenberg from the Pre-Distribution Initiative. And I asked this question yesterday in the member session, but I thought it would be useful to opine on it some more. We talk a lot about measuring impact and ESG at the portfolio company level, but lots of times the way we structure our investments, the way we structure our funds with a 2-in-20 model, which matters as impact scales, and we're managing billions of dollars of assets under management, right? That creates a lot of wealth for fund managers and might exacerbate income inequality. So that's one way we might structure investments at the fund level. Private equity firms might over-lever investments or be focused a lot on metrics like IRR versus longer-term valuation methodologies like multiple invested capital, which create short-term incentives for the deal team. How do we think about evaluating our fund managers and the practices that they have and the structures that they put in place? Tax havens where the funds and the portfolio companies are domiciled for tax avoidance. Should there be frameworks that focus on these issues as well, not just portfolio companies? Thanks.
Thanks, Delilah. There's obviously a lot of different kind of topics in there, but I think one thing that, a theme in your question, if I could assert, is this question about do we have the right structures that serve our ultimate aims? And not just about the kind of portfolio companies, but how investing itself works and how the funds and products are designed. And I think this is a tension we see in this market often of people working from the issues up and trying to support the needs of communities in terms of the financing they need, but also trying to take those products to a market that's used to seeing certain structures in certain ways, and there's a lot of convention that we operate in. And you were actually part of some work that we did at the GIIN with our network around alternative fund structures and how we can look at different ways of designing those. And we get a lot of feedback from leaders of businesses and people who are developing products that there is a better way to structure products, but it's very hard to sell those to investors. And I think it really speaks to this fundamental level of what are the things that we need to keep from business as usual, and what are things that we need to adapt, which is not just the focus on impact, but also the right structures that more holistically support our ultimate goals.
Great, thank you. That was a great question. I think it touches on the point that the gentleman was making with this question on the panel before, how much is too much, and if you're investing in impact but then exacerbating the same problems you're trying to fix with your tax havens and pay structures, then what impact are you having? So no, that's a great question. I think we are out of time.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, that was a really thought-provoking conversation. Thank you, Amit and Billy, for elevating some of the very concrete things that need to happen to make sure the impact investing industry is as effective as possible. Their session was titled Beyond Hope and Fear, and to me, I want to sort of pick that back up to that last question that was asked at the previous panel, which asked about should there be a cap on returns. Now, no matter what you think the answer to that question should be, I do think that's indicative of the very real debates that happen within the impact investing industry. I like to think sometimes that we're the gray in a black and white world, but impact investing can be messy at times, and it can be uncomfortable, and it can make us question the things that we took for granted. And I think that's okay and also good, because there is humility, honesty, and courage in asking those questions, especially if we want to see the transformative shifts in thinking that Amit was just talking about. So on that note, I want to thank all of you and all of today's speakers for helping today become a super compelling and energizing day for all of us. Now, I'll see you back here tomorrow morning. Our exhibition booths and beverages and pastries will be served from 7 to 9, and then we'll kick off with formal programming back at 9. But with that, please join us for a drink.
May you have auspiciousness and causes of success. May you have the confidence to always do your best. May it take no effort in your being generous, sharing what you can, nothing more, nothing less. May you know the meaning